Okay. All right. Let's talk about it.
It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And we're going to welcome you to our official Superhero Slate review of Aquaman.
That's right. Aquaman has finally dropped on our dock steps, I guess. I was going to say doorsteps, but I wanted to make it water-themed. We're going to hit you first with our spoiler-free thoughts. So if you stumbled into this podcast without seeing the movie yet, don't be too worried. But I would say after a couple minutes, we're going to jump into spoilers, and we're going to talk about all of the contents of this film. So
as soon as I silence my watch here, I apologize.
Yeah, I was
Jesus
like, is there like a forklift outside? That's a gigantic.
Well, today, just for everyone to know, today is a Friday. We're recording this early, and I am going to be off work for about 2 weeks almost. I'm going to Disney World, so we are not recording next week, and you are taking the old-fashioned Christmas trip home to the Midwest. So,
that's right. We will have a normal news episode this week still. We're going to have a nice, lovely co-host, which I would say is going to be a super time. And we will. What's our plan? Are we gonna reconvene before the end of the year and maybe do a year wrap up?
Are we gonna reconvene before the end of the year? We'll have to. I won't be in town.
Oh yeah, that's right.
We're taking next weekend off.
You're going to be in the land of Pandora.
Yeah.
I watched a nerdy in-depth review of that like Pandora Avatar land in like Disney World. So I was like, oh, I know Chris is going there soon. So things to avoid. Completely going off the tangent of Aquaman before we jump into it. Avoid the thing where you get your own avatar doll made after you, because apparently they sit you down in a chair and then they put like a fancy like scanner over your face that's literally not scanning anything, and apparently there's just like somebody behind a wall like looking at a picture of you just trying to assemble toy parts that kind of look like you, and it doesn't end up like looking at you at all. So just avoid the weird character creation thing. But
I'm gonna build my lightsaber again. That's my favorite thing to do.
But and hopefully the Avatar River ride, hopefully that animatronic is in A mode, because apparently it's pretty cool. But I heard the B mode of that animatronic is they literally take it off the ride and then they put down a projector screen and then they just project it onto the screen. And I was like, wow, that's a really crappy B mode for that thing.
Yeah. Well, it's not been. I mean, last time I was there, they were still building this. It hasn't been open, so it's new. But I don't know what to expect, man. I'll have to report back.
I hear it looks really cool. Like it's
okay.
You definitely get the Disney polish there. But why are we talking about Disney? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the DC podcast. We're going to be talking about Aquaman, Arthur Curry, Jason Momoa. Chris, if there's anything particularly you want to talk about with your theater-going experience, but if not, go ahead and just dovetail it right into your spoiler-free review for me.
I will tell you, screenings are getting earlier and earlier, and I don't know if it was because it's getting dark earlier, but mine was at 5 p.m. I'm like, I gotta leave work early. I gotta go in early to work to leave early to go to the screening at 5 p.m. And it wasn't very full, but there were in my row 3 to 4 middle-aged ladies, and I know what they were there for.
Ooh, you know it.
Not for the lore, that's for sure. So I think that was funny. Overall, it wasn't too bad of an experience. There, for people who want to know, there is a mid-credit scene. I won't tell you what it is, but you stay. I guess we never mentioned this anywhere. Stay through the mid-credit scene is what I would recommend. I guess we're just going to jump right into this, Mike. I'm going to say that I had a better time at Aquaman than I anticipated. My hype levels were not very high throughout the day going to this. I'm like, oh no, we have another DC movie. The last one was Justice League over a year ago. And I was like, I remember how I felt watching that one, and it was not very good. So going into this, I was pleasantly surprised by a lot of this movie. Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry is very charismatic, and you kind of like, awesome, this guy's pretty cool. The action scenes are through the roof. I did not expect action scenes on this level for this movie, Mike, especially being just Aquaman, who was like a C-lister, maybe even D-lister several years ago, right? He was like the butt of all the jokes. I think even Entourage was like, that was the joke. He was supposed to be Aquaman, right? In that show. However, this movie is 2.5 hours long, and that is about a half hour way too long for me. When this movie action scenes are going, you're like in it. You're like, yeah, let's do this. Let's go along for this ride. However, when those action scenes stop and everything slows down, and you're like, oh, we're in between action scenes, you really feel that drag. And that really just didn't jive with me a whole lot. But overall, I am impressed with this movie, although my bar for it was fairly low. I would say, if to put it on a scale of 1 to 10 this year, I mean, this is above Venom, but I'm not going to say it's by very much in my book. It's not the best movie, it's not the greatest movie, but this is an okay end to the year in terms of superhero movies overall. And that's what I would say. Mike, we've not talked about this at all. I really got to know what you think. You're really good at like hiding it from me. So lay it on us, buddy.
All right. Well, Aquaman, is it the worst movie I've ever seen? No. Is it better than Batman vs Superman and Justice League? Yes, it is. Is it better than Thor: The Dark World? Possibly. Is it as good as Wonder Woman? Not quite. It's really easy to rank movies in the DC cinematic universe right now because there's not too many of them right now. But I would say this one does fall short of kind of reaching the prestige of Wonder Woman, if you will. But yeah, I would echo a lot of the sentiments that you said. These action set pieces are on point, really cool. I mean, you'd kind of expect that from James Wan, who directed Fast and the Furious 7. And also there's like one or two kind of like scary parts where it looks like he's kind of channeling his Conjuring universe experience, but that really isn't too much there. But he has a very stylistic kind of sense for the camera. So we do get some really cool shots and some nice cinematic compositions. But this movie is incredibly bogged down with exposition, and it's not just trying to explain the not even very complicated lore. I feel like they just piled a little bit too much on top of it. And along with that, we get just moments of characters just reaffirming things the audience should probably already know. It's just like, no spoilers here, but I mean, this is all about an undersea monarchy. Aquaman, trying to ascend to the throne. So everybody's kind of seen these throne storylines before. Like, just give the audience credit. We kind of understand what's going on here. We can figure it out. We know we've seen plenty of seasons of Game of Thrones out there to kind of put all this together. But it was a fun time. I also went in with somewhat low expectations, and I can echo the sentiments from my wife, especially from those ladies that were seated in front of you. My wife's
beside me, don't you worry.
My wife's biggest complaint in this movie that Jason Momoa didn't have his shirt off enough. So I know exactly what these ladies are going to the movie for. And the first time Momoa takes his shirt off, I audibly heard a woman maybe 1 or 2 seats away from me just like go, ugh. Like, it's just very subtle. Like, this isn't just somebody trying to like make the hooping and hollering noises to make their friends laugh. This was just like an audible response from her seeing this man with their shirt off. So he's a looker. So that might factor into the box office. But Jason Momoa is very charismatic. Like, watching this whole movie, like, I was just like, he can carry any scene that he's in, just being kind of like this frat Aquaman bro that he is. Like, he kind of reached a levels of charisma that I think The Rock hits. I mean, I would love to see Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Jason Momoa in a film. I mean, talk about the star-studded like just chivalry that would just be imbued in that type of film. So anytime that we got Arthur Curry in there, just kind of being like tongue-in-cheek and kind of making fun of this fantasy world, I was having a good time.
Well, I wouldn't even say he's bro level. He's not like in your face bro. Like, he's just so laid back. Like, you want to hang out with him. Like, you want to have a beer with this guy, and people do have a beer with him in this movie. That's for sure. I gotta tell you, overall, I'm just, the action scenes blew me away at the end of the day. I can't tell you enough. Like, I didn't think they would be able to pull off some of these scenes that they did in this movie. And I don't know if you noticed, there's several long take scenes in this, whether it be underwater. The underwater effect is fantastic. It doesn't take me out of the movie at all. Like the hair moving around in the water and stuff like I was like, oh, they actually made this underwater world work without the air bubbles that they did in Justice League.
I would love to touch on the underwater moments a little bit more once we jump into the spoilers, because I'm afraid I'm gonna ruin something out there if nobody's seen the movie yet. But I think I had accidentally slipped and came across a couple reviews for this movie before I went and saw it myself. But once I came out of the theater, I was like, yeah, I think kind of like the Rotten Tomato level is about on point. I think it's around kind of like surfing somewhere in like the 70% range, and I was like, that feels about right. Yeah. Usually these big action movies, especially these superhero movies, is very much like a sink or swim. Man, these puns are just really coming to me. So they either do really great in kind of like the 80s and 90s, or they just plummet to the ground like under like 30s and they're really bad. So it is kind of weird seeing a superhero movie that just kind of does a better than average job. It's like there's not a whole lot for me to like just stand on my soapbox and scream about, but there's not really a whole lot for me to go like, wow, this is just kind of like next level like superhero filmmaking. So if you need something to go see this holiday with your friends and family, this is like a fun cinematic experience.
If you can't talk them into seeing Spider-Man because it's a cartoon and cartoons are for kids, this is, I think, a suitable replacement for that. If you're like, all right, fine, we'll go watch a real live action movie. I've got to say, if I was to pick the tone of this movie, what they were shooting for, this is essentially Thor, the Thor movies, meet Lord of the Rings underwater. Like, all three of those things are, like, right there together.
Maybe throw in a little bit of a globe trotting, maybe a la Indiana Jones. Like, not really comparing quality of the movie wise, but there's different set pieces. Yeah, there's different set pieces and locales as they kind of move through the fantasy realms. So,
and that's kind of why I said Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings has a lot of these same, the different visual styles, the different locales as well, not just the huge lore and like how crazy this underwater kingdom is. But yeah, overall, I mean, I would say I would recommend people watch this movie. I wouldn't not feel bad saying, hey, go check it out. It's not now it's in a weird place. It's literally in between Infinity War and Endgame. Like you're in between two of the most anticipated movies of the past 2 years, but I think it's still okay. I think we got a movie here that's pretty solid. The second best DC movie in my book, Mike. I would put it above Man of Steel in my book.
Oh, yeah,
and Suicide Squad.
Yeah, that's that's very easy to do.
So yeah, bar was low. Bar was real low, but they just like we talked about James Cameron earlier, he brought that bar right up out of the ocean, right up out of there. So
all right,
anything else?
No, I want to jump right into the spoilers. So, spoiler warning, I want to talk about actual moments that happened in this movie. And like I said, you were talking about the underwater moments. So, I don't know if this is going to be controversial or if this is just going to be totally going up against the curve. But just for me, preference-wise, I'm never too enthralled with underwater worlds in general. Things that happen on land, great. Anything happening through space or maybe even on an alien planet, sure, let's do it. But when we're underwater in this movie, I mean, I just don't know. I don't think there's a practical way to really make it look cool and accessible to me as a viewer. Everything in the background, it's always kind of like this dark blue and grayed, because we're in the water. Even when they're flying through Atlantis, or I guess swimming through Atlantis, we see all that kind of like this glowing like algae or whatever, kind of making it look like a big rave techno city. I mean, all that stuff looks great. I'm sure the concept art is amazing. But at the end of the day, to me, they're just always on kind of like this drab blue backdrop. And it's just, after a while, I was just like, I kind of wish they'd just go up on land so I could actually see them and I could kind of like see like the vibrant colors and their crisp edges. It was clever. This is definitely something I had never really seen before, actually telling a story underwater. So they seem to be doing a little bit of practical mixed with CG. I think most of the times when you see their bodies floating, I think their bodies are entirely CG. And then there's maybe like a motion captured like face imprinted onto them. And then they put some sort of like overall effect over it. So like if there literally was a camera underwater, they might be some waves going there. So I think James Wan did some pretty clever things to make it look like we are underwater, and they kind of pitch the voices just a little bit as sound would travel a little different through water. But for me, overall, the effect was just kind of like, all right, let's get to the land. I want to get to that part in the trailer when they're running across the rooftops, and like Black Manta is like shooting them with lasers. Like that scene was amazing. That was my favorite part in the film. So every time we kind of get to the water scenes, I'm always just kind of like, all right, where's the next set piece that I can like kind of finally breathe in? So I don't know. How did you feel when we were underwater?
Well, I think to me the underwater thing was like, they gave us a really good explanation of why everything wasn't pitch black in the ocean. Mm-hmm. That these Atlanteans, their eyes and everything adapts to themselves being underwater. And we did get some really cool colors out of it. Like I like it could have been the Phantom Menace Star Wars when they go through the bongo through the middle of the planet. Like that's what they could have looked like, which would have been bad. And I think maybe leaned into your hesitations a little bit, but underwater I didn't really mind it overall. I just the story, the Ocean Master Orm, his I guess taking over all the kingdoms went really, really quickly, and we didn't get to explore many of the other, like, I guess, civilizations underwater as much as we probably could have. But again, we're also dealing with the hierarchy of a kingdom, but we're always dealing with the upper echelon of the kingdom. Like we never get to see the average. What's an average Atlantean look like? Like what are they doing like throughout the day, kind of thing?
Yeah, I never really get a chance to kind of connect with just these undersea dwellers. Yeah, and I would say Black Panther doesn't exactly do a much better job, but at least we do get a few scenes where we get to see people in Wakanda, which I would say is a pretty good analogous situation. You kind of got a royalty monarch situation going there. They've got an advanced technological society that's like hidden away from everybody else. I mean, we do get to see T'Challa kind of walk through the streets a few times, and his friend that kind of trains all the rhinos. Yeah, at least they're kind of out. So you do kind of get to see ground level a little bit there. But yeah, with Atlantis, to me, it's like all we really saw was like throne rooms and like outer structures. And then everything there kind of seems pretty barbaric. They're kind of in that like fighting ring, and like everybody's cheering because they're trying to kill each other. So I never really connected with this undersea society at all.
That was I gotta say that fight scene underwater was pretty good. I did enjoy the Orm and Aquaman fight in that arena, a la Gladiator style, I guess. I think one of my biggest complaints is there's probably two here. One is I don't think anyone underwater was really in any trouble because it was all a fabricated story to attack the sea, like the land dwellers. Mm-hmm. Like you never felt like the ocean isn't really under attack. Like no one's really coming down to stop the ocean. It's just like we want to attack the surface. We got to figure out how to make that story work. Yeah. So I never felt like, oh my gosh, Arthur really needs to save Atlantis because Atlantis is gonna lose. It's I don't know, that was a little wonky to me. But also I gotta say, like after the desert, like when we see the history of the Trident in Atlantis back when it was on land, it fell in the ocean. But how did this technology help them breathe underwater? They were just like, we fell in the ocean and the Trident helped us breathe underwater, when the Trident literally broke every piece of technology they had before it fell. I don't know. I'm nitpicking here on that one, but like I was like,
no, I think that's fair. I mean, that's one thing that they really never got around to explaining was kind of the whole magic side of things. Like Mera throughout this whole movie is she's a magic user, and they never
she's really a waterbender.
They never really explain that different people in Atlantis, some can do magic, some can't. I guess people really weren't too concerned, like, oh, it's just magic. Yeah. But also, yeah, I think that's one thing that the villains really needed. They needed some sort of inciting incident. It's basically like this movie starts off just coincidentally around the time that Arthur's half-brother just decides he wants to attack the surface. It wasn't really on an anniversary where he takes the throne, or he's finally reached a certain age and now he can kind of do this, or like, oh, he's finally got promoted in the military, so now he's finally in control. Like, basically, his motivation was like, oh, you guys have been polluting the ocean. Well, it's just like, well, yeah, that's really shitty. You know, like, there's a bunch of garbage in there, but like when we were in Atlantis, I didn't see any garbage down there. So it's just kind of like, well, there's like littering on the surface too, you know, and we don't like it either, but we're not trying to kill each other over litter.
They've been doing it for years, and why does he want to do it automatically when Arthur becomes like you said, active as Aquaman? Like, why? Like, why does this timing have to do with anything? What is the incident? I think, you know, the incident there against King Nereus is this was kind of predictable. Like, the villain arc was very kind of predictable, I guess. Like, yeah, like my wife even leaned over to me and she's like, I bet Nicole Kidman's still alive. I'm like, yep, she's probably still alive.
Well, yeah, if you never actually see the character die, you can never assume that they're dead.
Yeah, and they keep saying, oh, she was sacrificed. She was sacrificed. I'm like, yeah, they keep saying that a lot. You know, that's really losing its impact here. Did you know Julie Andrews, the original Mary Poppins, was the voice of the Carathan?
Oh yeah, I did a little research online to kind of see how the internet thought about this film, and some people were saying, yeah, wasn't that weird that she was that monster? That monster kind of bugged me a little bit too.
The week of the other Mary Poppins coming out, is what my point is there. But yes,
yeah, that monster situation was kind of weird. So like Nicole Kidman, you know, she's been trying to get this trident for like 20 years. She says she's been the only one in like this undersea core of the earth, and she can't get past this monster. But like Arthur seems to be able to kind of stroll into this place, and he could have almost literally walked right up to that trident. But what was weird is, so that thing is protecting the trident, but then eventually that Kraken character says, oh, well, you can only grab the trident basically if you're worthy of it. So it's just like, well, why are you even there, lady?
Well, he also say no one can understand the Carathan. Like, no one else could hear it talk except for Arthur. So we were like the first people as well, other than Arthur, to hear it talk, and that's what gave him the chance.
Yeah, I mean, I leaned over to my wife after Arthur grabbed the trident, and I was just like, he just put that monster out of a job. What are they going to do anymore?
And then he rode it into battle.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of the character design either, just because we had like this big buildup of, oh, what could it be? We're only seeing these gigantic tentacles. It must be attached to something. And then it just ends up looking almost exactly like a kaiju from Pacific Rim, except it has some random tentacles on it. So I wasn't a big fan of the design of it, but it was a pretty cool moment. But did you notice though, when he busted out of the ocean floor, he basically like killed all of those crab people, like when he was aren't you there to protect this whole, like, I think you just killed them all.
Speaking of the Lord of the Rings, the king crab person was actually the guy who played Gimli in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, I think that's Gimli.
Yeah, so I was like, well, this is the parallels here are just way too obvious. The last scene that battle was pretty cool, but it became a little too much at some points.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to keep track of everything that's going on, since every kind of energy blast has kind of like a bubble trail. So you just have like so much going on. Yeah, it is kind of weird to be like, okay, well, where is he? Okay, he is commanding the trench. But the trench aren't swarming exactly on Ocean Master. They're kind of swarming around him. So there was a lot to tackle there in that fight.
Yeah, it was. But I do gotta say, it was cool to see him finally control all the fish, all the creatures in the water. Like, he's like, oh, you're now under my, like, I'm gonna tell you what to do. Like, turn on the people. Because if you think of Aquaman, what's he do? He talks to fish, man.
Yeah, that's true.
So he did pull it off.
So I will give this movie a compliment off the bat. So the movie kind of started a little weird. I would say almost slightly cringy when they're starting off telling the love story between his mother and father. You know, just kind of weird stuff happening where she like eats a goldfish. She's like creeping out the dog.
That's just a day in the life of Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, and I was just like, this stuff is kind of weird. But when those shock troopers showed up, blew a hole in the house out of nowhere. She picks up the trident, and then like we get to kind of finally see our first like melee action scene, and I was like, this is awesome, the way the camera's like flying around this house, like the choreography, the crazy stark white design on these kind of like mech shock trooper type deal. I was like, this is really cool. At that moment in the film, I was like, even if this movie is like dog shit.
Yeah.
As long as these action scenes are as fun as this, I think we'll be okay. So luckily, the movie was elevated outside of the action scenes a little bit. I thought we started off on a good foot, but did you notice that this movie had a trend of just blowing holes in walls during very silent moments? It just seemed to be like the only transition James Wan could think of. It happened like 3 times. So at the beginning when they blow through the house, it happened I believe again when they're on that when they're in were they in Tuscany? Is that where they were? Sicily. And then it happened one other time. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was definitely a trifecta of 3 where it's just like, okay, blowing a hole in the wall. Let's get this action scene going.
Yeah. And there was a lot of, or like people just getting kicked hard into things. Like nice hard kick into a wall. They get back up or they don't get back up. One of the two. I'm not sold on Black Manta yet, to be honest, in this movie. They did leave him alive. Everyone was pretty much alive at the end of this movie, right? Orm, Black Man. So they're gonna be back later. But I don't know. I thought the design of Black Manta was really cool. I loved his suit. We had seen that in the trailer, so I was looking forward to kind of see him. He's very imposing. But I didn't really understand his background and why a sea pirate all of a sudden could take Atlantean tech and craft it into a suit. I almost think I didn't even need an explanation. Like the Atlanteans should have just showed him a suit that was basically white, and maybe all he did was spray paint it black to kind of give it his groovy side. Fun story. I went to the bathroom once during this movie because it was raining and it's about water, so of course you got to go to the bathroom. I missed the Black Manta montage. Even Manta got a montage. My wife was she's like, "Manta got a montage." I'm like, "Yeah, I can see his suit." So,
yeah, well, I'll explain it to you. So basically, he's in kind of his workshop. He has all of this stark white, shiny Apple Atlantean tech, and then he just starts ripping it apart to some sort of god-awful music choice. Because I don't know about you, but the songs that they picked to incorporate in this movie were awful. Like there's like this weird Pitbull version of Africa's Toto.
That came out like a week ago, and I'm like, oh, this is awful. And then they showed it in the movie, and I'm like, son of a bitch.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if Weezer decides to cover Weezer's Toto's Africa, you can't just Pitbull, you can't just do the same thing. Go pick any other millions or thousands of songs out there to cover. So I don't understand why that even happened. And then there's other songs in this film that I just feel like maybe they're just like, you got to pick this one from the Warner Brothers archive. Sorry, you can't have any other songs. So the music choice in this film, I think, is honestly atrocious.
The credits music was kind of rough to sit through. I'm like, I hope this doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
To get there. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so anyway, Black Manta, he's kind of disassembling all this tech, and then he puts together like a proto-helmet that actually looks kind of similar to one of his earlier comic book designs, where the helmet's a lot smaller and it has a lot of rivets in it, so you can actually see the physical rivets, but it still has those same red lenses on the front, and then it gets overcharged, and then it blasts the hole.
That's from the trailer.
Then it cracks the helmet open, and then he says this god-awful line of just like, I guess I'm going to need a bigger helmet. It's just like, okay, I get it. You've seen Jaws, and this is a movie about the ocean.
That's where I walked in. I heard him. I guess I need a bigger helmet, but I was walking up the stairs, so I didn't get to see that part.
Yes.
So. What about Randall Park, the guy from Ant-Man and the Wasp, being in this movie?
I love Randall Park. I love him in Fresh Off the Boat, which is a sitcom on ABC. He's just a fun guy. His character was a lot of fun in Ant-Man, which is a funny movie, but to be honest, his character is totally out of place in this movie. I mean, he is just wacky and weird, and I don't know much about Aquaman's central cast of characters, so he very well could be playing some sort of weird conspiracy theory character in the Aquaman comic books, but he's so over the top. He's like a cartoon character trying to fit into this movie. It just not work.
It's a world where aliens came from the sky and stole these mother boxes, but they're still like, Atlanteans aren't real, whatever, aliens exist, but not Atlanteans. And
it's just like, didn't you see this catastrophic event of warships and all of the garbage washing up on all your shores, and you can't fathom anything living under the water?
There's Superman, there's Batman, you got a Wonder Woman, a Doomsday, the Steppenwolf, and no Atlanteans, so that's a myth. That's all made up. So I agree, like I want more of him in Ant-Man and the Wasp 3. But I don't know if I want him in Aquaman too.
Yeah, I don't think we need him. But, I mean, the other cast of characters I thought ended up being pretty good. I liked Amber Heard as Mara. The red hair, actually, I think it worked. I was staring at her hairline quite a bit, trying to see, like, because I've helped my wife dye her hair plenty of times. And especially with really bright colors like that, sometimes it'll dye the scalp. So I was just like, okay, they definitely got some professionals in there.
I think it's a wig.
Oh, I mean, I guess it possibly could be.
I think it was a wig. I don't think it was real hair.
But I was surprised that I forgot Dolph Lundgren was in this movie. I thought he did a pretty good job as that other king, if you will.
King Nereus. Yeah, I mean, I didn't recognize him. Like at first, I'm like, oh, that's actually a really good Dolph Lundgren role for him.
Yeah,
he did really well. In Volko, Willem Dafoe, he got a big role.
Oh yeah, it was kind of nice to see that. I guess Disney is not the only one that has that de-aging technology going on. Because I was like, oh wow, that Willem Dafoe looks pretty good young. So I guess that's not a patented technology.
and Tamura Morrison, who was his dad, he plays Jango Fett and all the clones.
Oh, that's why he looked familiar. I wonder what's easier for Hollywood to do. Do you hire an older actor for older scenes and then de-age them? Or do you hire a younger actor, and is it harder to add wrinkles in CG than it is to take them away?
I think right now it's easier to remove them.
Yeah, which is good for older working actors. Yeah. So it was kind of cool to see that technology to use. But there was one thing that I wanted to ask you, and don't be shocked if you can't think of anything, because I've been racking my brain. You know, I asked my wife, and she couldn't think of anything either. So think of all of kind of like the monarchy stories you've ever watched. You know, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Thor, even Black Panther, all of these things that's focused around kings and like this ruling class. It's always about a good guy trying to ascend to the throne so everybody in the kingdom is better off, right? Have you ever watched any sort of fiction or even read any sort of fiction where eventually the good guy takes the throne and then he sits back and thinks, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be ruling just because we're the royal class. Maybe we should vote on who's going to be the ruler. I just think this is a weird problem that a lot of kind of modern superhero movies are starting to run into, where it's just like, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea that there's just a king that was born into it that's running everything, because you have all these weird, complicated rules that get circumvented by the bad guys, and they just come in and they try to steal the throne, or it just leaves room for the good guys to come in and steal the throne. I guess it makes a good story for one time, but like eventually, like, hey, maybe you should have elections in your fictional fantasy world. I know that just sounds weird and crazy, but like, I've never seen that happen before.
Well, I mean, Black Panther kind of has that a little bit, if I could. Like, you know, the tribes have to agree for him to be king, or they can challenge the throne.
Well, they can. There's always a challenge aspect to it.
But their voting is more of a combat voting than an actual.
But it's always a blood right thing. And then when my wife and I were driving home from the movie, I was just like, okay, so we have two half brothers. They have both equal blood rights to this throne. And actually, I kind of get where Orm is coming from, to be honest. I mean, he has lived undersea his whole life. You know, he comes from a ruling class, his father. You know, whether he's a good guy or not, at least he kind of understands how stuff's working down there. So I was actually kind of shocked when Willem Dafoe was just like, he's already twice the king you'll ever be. And I was just like, hasn't he been to Atlantis like once? He's lived on his surface like the whole time. I get it that he's like a better guy, but I mean, if you guys are going to live in like this very strict system of like rules of becoming king, like, I think it makes sense for Orm to be really pissed that just some random hippie from the surface is coming in to kind of like take his seat, you know?
Well, I think it's more of it's just a usual movie trope. It's the guy who doesn't want to be king is usually the best person to be king, because the person who wants to be king is probably just power. That's Thor all over again. Like, you know, once he kind of gave up and everything, like, yeah, he was better fit to become king once he's like, oh, I don't want to be king. and Loki's trying to take it. So
yeah, it's almost like Thor kind of circumvented that problem in the future of just like, oh, well, Asgard's destroyed, so there's nothing really left to rule anyway, so we don't need a king. So good luck living wherever you're gonna live. This kingdom doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So all I'm thinking is basically we just have kind of like a very basic kind of like ascending to the throne story in this movie, which is one thing that doesn't elevate it. It's just kind of, we all kind of know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You know, Aquaman's gonna take the throne. He's gonna get the trident. So there's not a whole lot of curveballs or surprises happening in this film.
Well, I think the problem also is on an international level, like pushing democracy, you're going to lose your China market. I mean, just to be honest,
I guess I didn't think about that.
Like, to be honest, if you're pushing democracy in your movie and changing that, like, yeah, you're going to lose some bigger markets. If they just state the tried and true, like, we all know how kingdoms work. If you pull the sword from the stone, you're the winner, and you win. And your trident with 3 prongs instead of 5 is very magical. And yeah. Anyway, overall, I had a good time. I like Nicole Kidman. Her I'm surprised she got a kick-ass action scene, so that was really cool for her.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to think who else was in here. I don't know. Patrick Wilson makes a pretty good villain. Last time I saw him in a superhero movie was he was Night Owl in Watchmen. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he was a good turn. He was a good turn in this one.
Yeah, he really embodied the look of Ocean Master at the end of the film when he put on that helmet.
And it moved. Did you notice it moved with his brow?
Yeah, which I didn't particularly like. I thought it was kind of weird.
We don't get the technology there, man. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess, but yeah. Overall, I mean, it's a fun film. You just can't think about it too hard.
Yeah, just sit back and enjoy the ride. Just let Jason Momoa, Arthur Curry, let you look over you, say, my man, and just ride with him. You know?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully now that they got all the exposition out of the way, they explained all the different kingdoms. You know, he's finally got his trident. You know, we put him in the classic Aquaman suit, which looks pretty badass. So whenever this sequel, which has already been announced, comes along, hopefully we can just kind of like hit the ground running.
You just made me realize how close to Thor this really is.
I know it is. Like,
you've got like a brother and a stepbrother, and they both want to be king. Well, one of them doesn't want to be king. One does at the end.
There's a trident. There's a hammer.
There's multiple kingdoms. There's a magic weapon. You don't know about the other kingdoms, but you're probably going to learn about someone in the what is it? The deserted kingdom, or one of the other kingdoms, the Forgotten Kingdom, or something is going to come out in the next movie. The Dark Kingdom, if you will.
Yeah, I think, and that's kind of why I bring this up. Is like, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the tried and true story of like kings and queens, but like eventually we've all been around the bases. We've been around this town for a while, so it's just like we've seen this all. You gotta find a way to tell a different story.
What I think the next one will be a land-based movie, Mike, where it's not going to be the water people trying to come to the land and attack, but the land people learning about the Atlanteans and wanting to come down there and attack them. Like, I think this is how Black Manta and the Randall Park character are going to come into play. So we're going to see Aquaman defending his kingdom against the other half of his life, which is the land. So
you know what I would like to see kind of in this Worlds of DC story is
good movie. Okay.
I mean, I don't want them necessarily ripping off Civil War, but it would be kind of cool if there was a normal, average human that finally puts all the pieces together, that the Earth is more than what it seems. Because it seems like, all of these heroes, it's all blasé to them. You know, oh, there's something at the center of the Earth, no big deal. Oh, there's an island of Amazonians. There's aliens from space. All these, like, heroes, they have bigger stuff to worry about, so it's just like, oh, it's just another threat. It would be kind of nice to just somebody to just, like, put all the pieces together, like, holy crap, there's a place in the core. There's a hidden island over here. Like all of these heroes and everything.
There's a Shazam guy. He's magical.
Yeah, and that would be cool if maybe like a Lex type of guy could do that. Like he could maybe he would realize, these heroes are getting too powerful for us. It kind of runs along those lines of like the mutant storyline of like they're too strong. They can't be trusted or something like that. So maybe eventually
that felt Batman v Superman though. Be careful with that one.
I think it's safe to say that there's lots of things wrong with that movie.
Yeah,
maybe not necessarily that, but yeah, it's it's a weird movie to kind of like explain your feelings about, because there's good things and there's bad. I kind of like some of the creative camera choices James Wan takes, where every once in a while, like, he'll mount the camera either onto an arm or onto a gun, or he'll do like a crazy tracking shot where it'll really zoom out, like to like an extreme wide shot, and then you see Black Manta like blasting that kind of bell tower.
The long shots in this are just fantastic. Like, you don't realize you're watching, like, oh man, it's still going. It's still. They did one in the underwater Ring of Fire scene as well.
Yeah.
So.
But then also you kind of get some weird kind of flair from James Wan, which is kind of bizarre, where at the very beginning, when Arthur is walking through the submarine, taking out all those bad guys, there's a moment where he's like walking down the hallway and he kind of walks through like a steaming pipe. And then I could just sense James Wan is in the editing room. He's like, oh, this is a really cool scene. Can we make it in slow-mo? And then his editor is just like, well, you filmed it in 24 frames a second. So if we do a slow-mo, it's going to look really weird and choppy. And he's like, I don't care. Do a slow-mo. So there's a moment where that happens. It's just like, well, that's really kind of like a weird choice for that. So there's lots of style in this film, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So at the very least, we're not talking about just a generic by the numbers like bland movie. Like, there's fun stuff happening here. I
mean, it's like Venom is not colorful, and it's Venom could have been a black and white movie using the most recent movie. And this takes it to a new level and adds that visual flair that Venom lacks. They probably could have made Venom cool, but Aquaman does take it to that next level. It has like that extra little bit of like, not polish, but like everyone was trying a little bit harder. Like we gotta try something harder because we're selling Aquaman, and that's not fun.
And even though the screenplay is pretty clunky, at least things get going. Like, we get an action scene off the bat at the very beginning, and then we get these awesome like submarine fights. There's tons of action in this movie, which is definitely nowhere in Venom. Like, things don't really kick up with a symbiote until like well halfway through the film. So at least we can appreciate that.
And you can tell the budget in this one was a little higher than that. So they had the money. They wanted to put the money in this one too. Be like, yep, we're gonna make Aquaman have a little splash to it, if you will. Wink, wink. A little splash of color. Overall, I mean, again, I'd recommend people go see it. It's not going to change your world. It's not going to change your life, but I mean, it's still a fun ride. Like, those action scenes are worth it alone. I think the price of admission to see it, because I had to see IMAX. I had to see it in 3D. And there's only one time I noticed the 3D in this movie that actually like stuck out to me, is when they do those photos with the bikers in the bar. Those were actually like 3D photos in those. Like they're all the people are different levels.
Wow, the one time where the 3D, that was kind of a humorous moment. I thought we were about to get another a cheesy just like a
bar
brawl,
fight.
but then they just end up partying. So I think the best things about this film, easily the action and Jason Momoa's personality, which just like seeps into every scene that he's in, which is great. The worst parts about this film are probably the screenplay, and I would say possibly the overuse of CGI in some points, where it's just sometimes I think it detracts from what you're watching. But I would say that's at a minimum. Yeah, my biggest complaint is just with the story. So hopefully those things will improve in our next film. But I think we got a decent base here. Yeah. These are kind of like movies that I wish we had years ago before like Man of Steel came out. Like, this would have been a great base to build off of here.
This is on par quality-wise with Thor 1, to be honest. Like, I would put them up against each other and be like, yep, I'll watch either one of these two. Like, they're not my favorite things. They got some sucky parts, but overall, there's some great action, and the characters make it worthwhile to watch. So I would put them up against each other if you're looking for another comparison movie.
Yeah, I think Thor is a good way to look at it. I was actually going to watch Thor: The Dark World this morning before we jumped into this podcast, because I thought it would be a good comparison point. But that movie is not streaming anywhere, and I was like, I'm not about to drop $3 to rent this movie.
Man, I would put Thor: The Dark World in terms of like Justice League level though. Like, I hate Thor: The Dark World.
Wow. Well, we're gonna have to rewatch that at some point and just.
I watch it every year. It's part of my countdown to.
Oh
the
yeah,
next
that's
movies.
right.
Anyway, Mike, we're done talking about Aquaman, right? People should go see it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, people want to
go
see
check
you.
it out. But
Oh, there's more.
If you only get a chance to see one movie, you got to see Spider-Verse. We already did the spoiler cast. We did the review on Spider-Verse. I love that movie. Fires off on every cylinder. So if you have to pick one, it's got to be Spider-Verse.
Right.
But if you've seen that movie already, go see Aquaman.
Yep, I totally 100% agree. If people want to see what you're up to this holiday season and maybe some of that sweet swag you're going to get, where can people find you at?
Well, swag, also known as Christmas presents. You can follow me at Mike Royer Design on Twitter and Instagram, and you can read my webcomics at pickledcomics.com. Chris, if people want to keep up with you, see what you're doing this holiday season, especially when you go to Disney, I'm hoping you're going to be putting up some pictures there on social media. I love Disney parks, man. Where can they find you?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter at Valdan, Valdan, or Instagram, Valdan87. I will be posting those sweet Disney pics. Probably won't get to see any Marvel stuff, but I'm gonna see what I can do. And you can also head over, and I've been uploading the Film Side Chats old episodes back up, so you can go listen to those if you want to. And also head over to Comic UI. If people want to know more about our show, Mike, this is a review episode. These only happen when movies come out. If people want to know our weekly news episodes we do, where can they find those?
Well, as Chris digests his Qdoba, you can always visit superheroslate.com. That is the best place to find all the avenues we host our show. And when we're doing our normal news episodes and we're talking about news, we have all of our show notes up there too. So if we're talking about a new trailer, which I know Chris is going to be talking about the Hellboy trailer here coming up this weekend, and we always got leaked images and concept art. You can get that in our show notes at superheroslate.com. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. I hope to eventually put the podcast literally everywhere so I don't have to read this list every week because I get so tongue-tied. But you can also like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram, and you can get merch over at superheroslate.com/store. If you like the podcast, we love hearing from you, so you can drop us a comment, you can drop us a tweet, you can shoot us an email, leave a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to us. Those reviews are the best gift you could possibly give us during this holiday season.
That's right.
And if you want to be a super fan of Superhero Slate, if you wanna be in the know, if you want to be the superest fan you can be, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and I usually say we'll be here every single week, and we almost 99% of the time are, but there is literally only 1 week a year where we take off, and it is right around this time of the year during the holidays.
It's usually two, one in the summer, one in the winter. This is our winter break. So.
Yeah. So I think you'll be fine with only 50 podcasts a year instead of 52. But we love you. Tune in for the news episode that Chris is going to record with our special guest. I will be 30,000 miles. How many miles in the air do you get when you're on a plane?
I don't know. You'll be pretty close to me. Oh. I don't think 30,000 miles, but yeah. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I might be totally overshooting.
It's called the Mile High Club, not the 30,000 mile.
30,000 feet. 30,000 feet. That's what I'm thinking. God, I'm like halfway to the moon probably. I don't even know. I don't know scale, Chris.
I can tell.
But I will be in a plane trying to download stuff on the Netflix that I can watch. So keep chill. I don't know. See you in the new year.
You're rambling. We'll see you guys next year. Thanks for listening.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.
I don't have a favorite Smash controller. I think GameCube is probably the closest I have.